Bem, Europa, vamos ver uma coisa com mais história e mais interesse. Europa medieval, 1000 anos em 20 minutos. Eu acho que isto tem... Pá, vamos tentar educar, não é? Vamos ver coisas com sei lá.
Civilization was forged on the European continent.
Sim, os romanos.
Nobles and kings, faith
ainda
and
não.
warfare, culture
Holy
and
Roman
learning,
Empire, sim.
trade and innovation. These set the foundations of the modern era.
Verdade.
This is the story of how Europe was
born. Ok, vamos embora, siga. É isto
In
que um
the
gajo
first
gosta de
2
ver.
centuries CE, the
Era
vast
tudo
Roman
romano.
Empire engulfed the Mediterranean
Era
Sea.
tudo os gajos.
It was a time of stability, prosperity, and peace.
Sim.
A Pax Romana. Citizens enjoyed
paz
its
romana.
flourishing culture, fair quality of life,
Sim.
and relative security.
Nós fodemos isto tudo, já pensaram nisso? Fomos nós que demos cabo disto. Podíamos ser romanos até hoje, estávamos bem, vivíamos nesta civilização tranquila, não tínhamos o Chega, pá, havia paz mundial. Para que é que tivemos que foder isto, pá? Viriato.
This was achieved through Rome's centralized government and advanced infrastructure. In the remote eastern margins of the empire, a new religion was born.
Pronto, foi Cristo.
Christianity. Beginning as a small Jewish sect, it slowly spread throughout the pagan Roman world. In the 4th century, it was embraced by the emperors, becoming the official state religion. But by then, Rome's glory days were over. The empire was suffering from inflation, plagues, famine, and invasions. Managing it from a single center was becoming impossible.
Acabámos com isto tudo.
In 395 CE, the empire was divided in two. A western empire with Rome as its capital, and an eastern one ruled from Constantinople, also known as the Byzantine Empire.
Pois foi isso.
While the east was urban, rich, and prosperous, the west was rural, poor, and weak.
Pois.
It didn't last long. In the deep forests beyond the empire's borders, barbarian peoples were on the move. These were mostly Germanic tribes led by warlords and their loyal bands of warriors.
Os germanos,
These groups were pressing harder and harder on the Rhine and Danube rivers. Without much choice, the Western Empire began allowing them entry. Eventually, the frontiers were breached, enabling various peoples to migrate and settle
os
within the
germanos
borders of the empire.
Olha, aí vêm eles.
Whether guests or invaders, these peoples carved up Roman territory while imperial authority was crumbling. In 476, the barbarian leader Odoacer deposed the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, Romulus Augustulus. This child had no real power, but his removal stands as a milestone. The Western Roman Empire was no more. The so-called Dark Ages had begun.
Olha os visigodos.
Romans, Christians, barbarians. These were the three main ingredients that combined to create medieval Europe.
Uma javardice todo o tamanho. Foi isso? Então, como assim Viriato? Foram os romanos que assassinaram Viriato. Certo, mas é isso, foi essa revolta que deu origem a isto, não vês?
Was covered by newly established kingdoms,
visigodos,
by barbarian kings. Their elites, emerged between Romans and barbarians, had gradually converted to Christianity.
Yeah.
The most prominent kingdoms were those of the Ostrogoths in Italy, the Visigoths in Spain, and the Franks in Gaul. But these kingdoms were lacking key elements necessary to manage successful states. The great cities of antiquity were depopulated, some left in ruins.
Pois.
The Roman transportation system decayed, eroding communication and long-distance trade.
Meu Deus.
Coins vanished, leaving no economic system to support.
Mano, foda-se, é que Roma foi mesmo à vida em 3 dias.
Crippling administrative systems. And most notably, peace and security were gone. This impoverished rural west was becoming more and more
foi tudo à vida, bro.
Fragmenting politically and linguistically.
Os francos, foda-se. Saxões, os anglo-saxónicos.
It paled in comparison to its stronger neighbors.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain.
Sim, já sei, Master. Tivemos a falar sobre isso há bocado.
In the 6th century, Byzantine Emperor Justinian I strove to reconquer the West and restore the Roman Empire to its past grandeur.
Deve ter sido.
But after conquering Italy from the Romanized Ostrogoths, the peninsula fell prey to new invaders, the Lombards. The Byzantines had to accept that the division between East and West was final. But soon they had to acknowledge yet another division, this time between North and South. In the 7th century, Arab armies swept through the Middle East and North Africa with astonishing speed, creating an immense Islamic caliphate.
Yeah, Caliphate
Where
Islamic.
one civilization once thrived, now there were three: Islamic, Byzantine, and medieval. For a brief moment in the 8th century, it seemed as if the fragile and weak West might be overwhelmed by the caliphate.
E foi.
Muslim armies crushed the Visigothic kingdom in Spain,
Yep.
then went on to
Olha as Astúrias, aí vamos
in
nós.
732, in the Battle of Tours, they were defeated by the Franks under the leadership of Charles Martel.
Yeah.
Islamic expansion in the West was halted, and the
Yeah.
victorious Charles gave his name to a dynasty that was to change European history forever, the Carolingians.
Carolingians. Agora é que vimos nós. Carolingian
Charles
Empire.
Martel's son, Pepin the Short, seized the
Mano, imaginem serem conhecidos como Pepin the Short.
Frankish throne in a coup. He fought the Lombards in Italy, granting the Pope his own most desired autonomous state.
Pronto.
Pepin's son was the famous Charlemagne. After
Charlemagne.
ascending the Frankish throne in 768,
Charlemagne é
he spent decades fighting and expanding his kingdom.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he held sway over most of Western Christendom.
Yeah.
In 806,
Córdoba.
Pope Leo III anointed
Córdoba
Charlemagne
e Granada.
Emperor of the Romans. More than 300 years after the fall of Rome, the West had an emperor once again.
Yeah.
The Carolingian Empire was the first great power of the medieval West, leaving an enduring legacy. Charlemagne backed an intellectual and cultural flowering, the first of several medieval renaissances, intending to revive the lost knowledge and culture of antiquity.
Yeah.
The empire disseminated throughout the West various political structures, institutions, titles, ranks, ideas, and dreams. Most importantly, an ideal of a unified Christian West. These formed the bedrock of medieval civilization.
Agora quero ver quando é que aparece Portugal. Os caras não vão
The
falar.
Carolingian Empire was short-lived. The attempt to create centralized rule in the West suffered from insufficient infrastructure, small cities, weak economy, limited bureaucracy, and poor communications. After Charlemagne's death, his three grandsons fought one another, and in 843, in the Treaty of Verdun,
Charles the
divided the
Bald.
Frankish Empire among themselves.
Pronto, já está mais ou menos a
The Middle
formar.
Kingdom quickly diminished, leaving only West Francia, which would eventually become France,
France, yeah.
and East Francia, which will one day become Germany.
Germany, yeah.
These kingdoms continued to splinter and fragment, a process accelerated by external pressure.
Yep.
In the 9th and 10th centuries, a new wave of invaders attacked the crumbling
Vikings.
Carolingian world from every direction. The Vikings came
Yep.
from the north, roaming the coasts and rivers of
Vikings
Europe,
limparam
raiding and terrorizing the population. The Magyars, better known as Hungarians, rode in from the east.
E os
plundering
árabes
the
continuavam a puxar
defenseless
para baixo.
settlements.
Pelo sul.
And finally, Muslim pirates
Yeah.
and raiders landed on Europe's southern shore.
Yep.
Was
Javardice
under
máxima.
siege.
Yep. Agora somos nós, caralho. Vamos
As the
embora.
West was crumbling under repeated attacks, kings lost their power, while local elites grew stronger.
Olha Leon a
Europe was
aparecer ali.
getting covered with a dense network of Roman castles, serving as
Este gajo não
fortified
vai
residences
falar
of
sobre a
local
conquista da
noble
Península
families.
Ibérica. Está a brincar
From
connosco.
these strongholds, lords subjugated the peasants in their vicinity, extracting their resources.
Estás a brincar que ele não fala. Já está ali a aparecer Leon.
Hands by
Como é que é,
coercive
Sofia? Estás
force.
bem?
In previous centuries, peasants were an integral part of infantry armies,
Yep.
but new military innovations, such as the stirrup, further established cavalry as a decisive force.
Yep.
This new kind of warfare required resources only nobles could obtain. Consequently, European elites became full-time professional fighters.
Sim.
In a world ruled by a warrior nobility, territorial power was attained by vassalage.
Vassalagem, yeah.
One noble granted another land and protection, and expected in return his fealty and military service.
Estamos a ver a formação da
Kingdoms
Europa,
were becoming
Sofia.
complex networks of personal relationships and mutual obligations. Kings were often weak and could be easily overshadowed by their strong vassals.
Yep.
This is often described as the feudal system.
Feudal system.
Centuries would pass before centralized states would emerge again in the West.
We're using whiteboards every day to transform the way we bring
Eu
video
agora
to
só
life.
quero
As a fully remote agency, whiteboards let
que
us collaborate.
apareça mudanças das marés.
In the 10th century, things started to change. Better climate increased agricultural yield. External invasions ceased as Vikings and Hungarians settled down and were absorbed into Western Christendom. And in some regions, royal authority was gaining ground.
Nós.
In Britain, King
Olha, Leon.
Alfred the Great
Este
and
gajo não vai
his
falar sobre a
unified
conquista
the
de...
various Anglo-Saxon realms,
É em 1111, sim,
creating
mas
the
é...
Kingdom of England for the
Mas
first
olhem
time.
lá, é a formação do
In
reino.
West Francia,
Porque aqui já, os espanhóis já estavam a ganhar... Leão já estava a ganhar terreno aos árabes à bué.
political fragmentation continued. Vikings who settled in the north swore loyalty to the Frankish king. They became
Sim, não é?
French
Pá,
Christians,
foda-se, é
known as the
vergonhoso.
Normans.
Nós corremos com os árabes
The
daqui,
Duchy of
nós e
Normandy
espanhóis.
created a buffer against other raiders. In East Francia, Otto I, king of the Germans,
Otto the
managed to
Great.
defeat the Hungarians in the Battle of Lechfeld in 955,
Yep.
putting an end to the invasions from the east. The settled Hungarians eventually established a Christian kingdom of their own.
Yep.
The victorious Otto the Great was crowned emperor in 962. Europe had an empire once again,
Yep.
this time a German one. It was later known as the Holy Roman Empire.
Holy Roman Empire.
After centuries of turmoil, Europe was finally gaining stability and confidence, ready to change course.
Os bizantinos já estavam a ir à vida.
The
Depois
year
veio a queda de
1000 marks
Constantinopla.
a turning point in European history,
Yep.
ushering in 300 years of growth and prosperity.
Verdade. Isto também é mais sobre a
Better
era
climates,
medieval.
combined with new technologies and techniques,
Reparem que para em
led to an
1500.
agricultural revolution. Europeans produced more food, resulting
Reparem
in
que
population
caem
growth.
que... Sim, mas isso
New villages
é
and
mais
towns
tarde,
were
ó,
established,
Barroso,
and
não é nessa
existing
altura.
ones expanded. Throughout Europe, forests were cleared as more and more land came under cultivation. This enabled immense economic expansion and commercial revival.
Ok.
Bustling trade networks fed a massive urbanization process. Old and new cities grew larger, becoming international hubs for a new class of merchants. These merchants won their independence from feudal landowners,
Giro.
forming self-governing cities. This was most evident in Italy, where merchants revived the Mediterranean trade.
Yeah.
As quality of life improved, art, architecture, and music flourished. Europe was becoming increasingly literate, and the first universities were founded under the
Chama-se
auspices
Europa
of the
Medieval,
Church.
1000 anos em 20 minutos.
European intellectuals initiated a new renaissance based on the rediscovery and revival of ancient knowledge. But Europeans were not only
Olha,
conquering
Portugal
internal
ali.
frontiers, they were also pushing outward.
Olha Portugal já ali. A empurrar os árabes para baixo.
During the Central Middle Ages, aristocrats from the Carolingian heartland conquered and colonized new territories, pushing the boundaries of Western Christendom.
Pois isto
This
é o
process,
nosso problema.
described as the Europeanization of Europe, resulted in an expanded and more homogeneous civilization. In 1066, William the Conqueror,
Pois
Duke
depois
of
foi as
Normandy,
invasões.
invaded England. In the Battle of Hastings, he delivered a decisive blow to the Anglo-Saxons. England was transformed into a Norman stronghold.
Yep.
In Iberia, the Christian kingdoms of the north fought the Muslims to their south, gradually extending their control over
Nós,
the peninsula.
Aragão,
This was
Castelo e
viewed
Portugal,
as-
caralho, vamos embora, pá.
In
Ficaram
southern
sem granada
Italy
já.
and Sicily, Norman warriors conquered vast territories from the Byzantines and Muslims. They allied with the Pope and established another Norman kingdom.
Sicília.
In Eastern Europe, German aristocrats and peasants gradually moved eastward, settling on Slavic lands. But Europeans were casting their gaze further still. In 1095, Pope Urban II called on Christian warriors to liberate Jerusalem and
Pois,
other
isto
holy
aqui é que
sites
começou a
from the hands of
merda.
Muslim infidels.
Aqui é que começou a merdonga. Pronto, aqui começou a merda. Esta cena das cruzadas é que foi a javardice. Sabem? Depois a partir daqui, olha, isto dura até hoje, se pensarem. Este conflito.
Crusader armies swarmed to the east,
Yeah,
establishing
até
several
Jerusalém.
states on the shores of the Mediterranean
Como é que é,
Sea.
Bowsy?
These states proved to be a weak western outpost.
Yeah. Fomos
Over the
corridos
course
de
of 200
Jerusalém
years, they were
completamente.
reconquered by Muslim forces.
Yep. Saladino limpou isto completamente.
Nevertheless, they signaled an important message. The Catholic Church had awakened.
Yeah.
In the early Middle Ages, the Pope was weak, holding little influence outside Italy.
Yep.
The Church was a loose network of priests and monks, appointed and controlled by local aristocrats. In the 10th and 11th centuries, a movement emerged set on reforming the Church and society as a whole.
Augment Code is the best AI coding tool for professional software engineers. They've put a lot of time and effort.
The reformers demanded to free
Mega
the
fome.
Church from the world, to extract it from the influence of kings and nobles, and rebuild it as a papal monarchy. Pope Gregory VII, an enthusiastic reformer, clashed with the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV over the authority of appointing bishops in the empire.
Okay.
The first round of conflict ended with Henry waiting for 3 days in the snow outside a fortress at Canossa, begging for the Pope's forgiveness.
Porra.
The second round, however, ended as Henry invaded and appointed his own pope, forcing Gregory into exile.
Com caralho.
Although it seemed as if the emperor had won, in the 12th century it became clear that the papacy and the reform were victorious. The church had become a robust, centralized, hierarchical organization
Pronto, depois
with
começa.
elaborate administrative
Yeah,
and
já
legal
era tudo.
systems and immense resources. Its power stretched across Europe.
Yep.
At the top of the pyramid was the Pope,
Yeah.
ruling the church as an absolute monarch.
Yep.
As popes grew stronger, kings were left envious. Then they followed suit. The power of medieval kings was constrained by the armed aristocracy.
Quanto tempo?
During the Central Middle Ages, their numbers vastly increased, and castles were multiplied.
Não, McDonald's ainda não
with
havia
wood
nesta
being
altura.
replaced by stone, and designs
Yeah.
getting bigger
Os
and
castelos.
stronger. Aristocratic lifestyle and culture underwent refinement with the advent of the Christian knight ideal and the code of conduct known as chivalry.
Chivalry.
But at the same time, aristocrats in some regions were faced with the emergence of stronger kings and kingdoms. In England, the Anglo-Norman dynasty formed a small and consolidated state, free of the feudal mess abundant on the continent. In Iberia, the reconquest of land from the Muslims strengthened the Christian kings, enabling centralized states to emerge. In France, the kings of the Capetian dynasty gradually expanded their personal domains, enabling a functioning state to form there as well. However, in the Holy Roman Empire, the exact opposite occurred.
Lixaram-se
The
todos.
once mighty empire disintegrated,
Yeah.
forming a mosaic of autonomous principalities.
Yeah.
Emperor Frederick
Bohemia.
Barbarossa attempted to restore the empire's
Já
former
ouviram falar da Bohemia, não ouviram?
glory, but failed.
Nervo, como é que estás?
The title of emperor, now bestowed by electors, became an empty one.
Yeah.
The Central Middle Ages saw an agricultural revolution, urbanization, expansion, stronger popes, stronger kings, and vibrant culture. But around 1300, the climate worsened, growth halted, and famine spread. A great calamity was approaching.
Estamos a ver a formação da Europa. Yeah, a praga. Uf. The Black Death.
The 14th century marks a watershed in European history.
A plague.
In
Peste
1347,
negra.
a global plague, now known as the Black Death, reached Europe. It rapidly spread across the continent,
Morreu isto.
and within a few short years killed approximately 1/3 of the population.
Yeah, absurdo isto.
It was an unprecedented demographic disaster.
Yeah.
Entire settlements were wiped off the map.
Yep.
Recurrent outbreaks of the plague would continue striking Europe for centuries.
Yep.
However, during the 14th and 15th centuries, Europe recovered, and for some survivors, the consequences of the plague were not so grim. As the population dropped, land became widely available, and the demand for labor rose dramatically. The bargaining power of peasants and workers increased, and they demanded improved conditions.
Não, Pina, estamos só a ver como é que aconteceu.
Revolts erupted across Europe.
Revolts.
Nearly all of them were brutally suppressed. Yet, in the long run, change was inevitable. In Western Europe, peasants gained new freedoms and opportunities, and workers enjoyed higher wages. Out of the darkness of the Great Plague, creativity emerged. Technological innovation brought forth
Aí vimos nós.
water mills, eyeglasses, new techniques for metal production.
E barcos, caralho, onde é que estão os
and, of
barcos?
course, the printing press. In the quickly recovering cities, new cultural trends flourished. A new renaissance thrived in Italy, set on reviving and surpassing the cultural achievements of ancient Greece and Rome.
Epá.
Renaissance scholars developed a new outlook on the world and on man's place within it. They defined the past millennium as Dark Ages, and so positioned
Dark
themselves as the transition between the medieval and modern world.
Yeah. Warfare and state.
In the late 14th and 15th centuries, gunpowder transformed European warfare.
Ah, pois foi.
The bravest knight could be shot down by simple infantrymen
É
from a
verdade.
distance, and the most fortified castle could be breached with cannons.
É verdade, sim senhor.
Supporting the new infantry and artillery armies was a costly affair, which only kings could manage. As they strove to monopolize the use of force within their territories, kings consolidated their power and asserted their authority over the aristocracy.
Nós já vimos aqui, Maria. Podias ter
What
visto
matters
aqui
to you?
connosco.
These nobles, who lost their military superiority, began serving their rulers as administrators and courtiers. The sovereign state was emerging. In these troubled times, Europe's new military innovations were constantly put to the test. The 100 Years' War waged between England and France devastated the French countryside.
Guerra dos 100 anos. é.
The war's course was reversed by a peasant girl, Joan of Arc,
A Joana
who
d'Arc.
rallied French troops against the English. Eventually, England was pushed out of France.
Yeah.
In Iberia, the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile
Castile.
led to the emergence of a unified Spain.
É, Isabel de Castelo.
Their combined armies conquered Granada, the last Muslim
Como é que é,
stronghold
Alexandre?
in the peninsula. These developments lay the foundations for the modern nation-states of England, France, and Spain. Other regions, such as Germany and Italy, would have to wait
Bro,
several centuries
é-
for their
é sério.
unification.
Pronto. Sim,
As
finalmente
the
ou
Middle
não?
Ages came to a close, Europe had not only recovered from the crisis brought by the Black Plague, but had also rebuilt itself on strong
1500. Agora é
foundations.
que é. Já, bué, Portugal.
Gradually, its focus shifted outward.
Ah, finalmente!
1500, Portugal had traversed Africa and the Indian Ocean, opening up commercial routes to the Far East.
Pronto.
Spain turned westward, crossing the Atlantic Ocean and reaching the Americas.
Pronto, olha para onde é que nós fomos.
Columbus'
E o Brasil, ó
discovery in
estúpido!
1492 is sometimes considered to mark the end of the
Nós
Middle
fomos
Ages.
para todo lado. Foi para a Índia, para o Japão, para o Brasil. Os espanhóis, por acaso, calhou irem para ali. É que foram ilhas, foi para todo lado. Olha, nós fomos literalmente para todo lado. Foi para aqui, viemos para aqui, fomos para ali, fomos para todo lado. E só tivemos azar que o Colombo foi contratado pelos espanhóis. Podíamos ter sido mais inteligentes e tínhamos ficado com o mundo todo.
Crossing the Atlantic Ocean and reaching the Americas. Columbus's voyage in 1492 is sometimes considered to mark the end of the Middle Ages,
É o Colombo que vá
the beginning of the modern.
cagar à mata.
Over the next centuries, European expansion would transform the globe and
Bro.
create the modern world we live in today.
Mano, foda-se, nós podíamos ter sido tão mais inteligentes nesta história toda, mas pronto. Está a giro, pá, está a giro, está engraçado. Portuguese Empire. The entire history of the Portuguese Empire. Está aqui. Mas nós não vamos ver isto, que isto depois é demasiado saudosista.